now my pleasure to introduce our three speakers for today. You will see our little values icons, and as I mentioned earlier, each of our speakers is going to be really capturing and embodying one of our community of practice values. So we've got Erik de Boer, he's here. Fascinating presentation on paleo ecology. I don't know how many of you have come across that before, but we all find it so interesting, and he's really embodying the value of curiosity. Then we have James Meadows, who will be telling us a little bit about integrated landscape management and why collaboration is so important. And then we have Dr. Purnima Devi Barman, who will be absolutely inspiring us with her amazing story of creating a female army of conservationists to protect the stork in her community in Assam. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and hand it over to Erik, and I really hope that you enjoy the presentations today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jessica, for this very inspiring introduction. We'll start sharing my screen in a few minutes. I'm happy to see so many people as well. Very happy. And if it's correct, you can all see my screen now. And today I want to talk a bit about my own experiences on some collaborations I had with rewilding programs on the island of Mauritius. And for me personally, rewilding is an innovative approach to preserve biodiversity and also to restore ecosystems and ecosystem processes. And it's also in a way that engages a lot of different people. It engages scientists, but also local people and communities. And it's also a relatively new science, and so for me that makes it very interesting. It's not specifically defined yet, and as a very progressive way, I think it's very inspiring for me. And as I think it will be in the chat box, I'm a paleoecologist, and paleoecologists, we are interested. We are interested to study the long-term ecosystem dynamics of different systems. And we look at a long-term view of ecosystems and how they have been functioning. And we take that from fossils in sedimentary records. As you can see here, we take cores. And I think there will be also a definition in the chat on paleoecology. But what these fossils tell us, they actually allow us a tiny time machine to travel back into the past, and they all give us indications on specific environmental conditions that were present during the time of the sedimentation. And if you make records through it, you have kind of record through time. Well, and if we talk about rewilding, it is very important to know what kind of ecosystem functioning or a kind of ecosystem dynamics you aim to restore. So in that sense, that's from my personal perspective the most exciting thing about rewilding. And here is just a very short example of one of those vegetation records. This is a Kanaka crater, volcanic crater in Mauritius. And here we have a 40,000-year-long record of vegetation response documented by pollen. And when we study this, we can ask questions on what kind of, how did species respond to climate change in the past? Were these forests resilient to changes? And how did this ecosystem function? And another very interesting thing is that we can also study the ecological consequences of extinction and landscape degradation. And in this last aspect, islands are very interesting because often we know quite well when humans arrived in these systems. So we have a part where we have natural dynamics that we know for sure there's no influence by humans. But once humans arrive, we can document the different stages of habitat loss and landscape degradation and determine the human footprint. And this is also what we've been doing in the last years. And there's a lot of scientists now very interested to understand better this human dimension that happened after human arrived. But today I want to focus on Mauritius. And most people think about Mauritius is the lost land of the dodo. The dodo became extinct once humans arrived on the island. There were no indigenous people, and it was one of the last islands to be colonized. And it was actually the Dutch almost 400 years ago that settled the island. And the dodo became sort of icon of extinction. But it was not only the dodo, but more than 30 species of larger vertebrates went extinct on the island. And you can see that within 4 centuries, most of the landscape has been degraded, and most of the remaining diversity can only be found in less than 2% of the land cover. So these problems of overpopulations on the island, pressures from humans, from tourism, and little space for biodiversity to respond to climate change impacts, especially the low coastal areas. These are very important themes that are not only very important in Mauritius, but important in the whole of the world. So Mauritius can actually tell us a lot of ways to approach these problems. Well, I arrived for the first time to the island more than 10 years ago, and perhaps I was maybe as naive as the dodo. The first time I arrived on this island, I was like, wow, look at this beautifully green area. But yeah, in effect, what you see all are invasive species. But once I started studying the fossils of the island, so here you see some pollen grains, and all these pollen grains, they have disappeared from the landscape. So in the last couple of 100 years, we also see that not only animals went extinct, but we had a whole suite of plants, especially palms, that went extinct. And in effect, there are entire ecosystems that were lost. So in the last couple of 100 years, especially a very palm-rich tropical cloud forest that used to grow on Mauritius. And this is sort of a surrogate on the island of Réunion, but that's completely lost. And to give another documentation on a simple study, we just looked at charcoal particles we found in a swamp in the last 1,000 years to record the fire history of a lowland area in Mauritius. And here you can actually see the site of the first Dutch landing. And over here you have the area where the Dutch first settled the island 400 years ago. And here you can see the last 500 years, and the 500 years before I don't show because there's no charcoal, there's no fire in the landscape. But what happens when species such as giant tortoise and dodo went extinct? We see that fire starts to increase rapidly. And our explanation was that these animals have a very important role as ecosystem engineers. They were roaming on the islands in populations of 100,000s. They were keeping the herb layer, the grass layer, low or even absent. And you can imagine that once these animals population collapse, these shrub layers, they start to grow up, and there's a lot of potential biomass to get burned. So once also humans introduce the fire in the landscape, and then whole forests are lit up. So is it all doom and gloom on Mauritius? No, there's a lot of conservation success in Mauritius. And to start off, Mauritius is a kind of a birthing place for a lot of conservation efforts. And it was already Charles Darwin that visited the island at the end of his travels around the world with a beagle that visited Mauritius. And he saw the devastated population collapse of giant tortoises on the island. Giant tortoises were used as food on the long sea travels. And he suggested in a letter to his friend Richard Owen that maybe the people should translocate giant tortoises from the nearby coral atoll Aldabra to Mauritius. And so that's a very interesting thought, is that perhaps it's already the first idea of rewilding from Charles Darwin already. Well, another very major conservation success is the Mauritius kestrel. That was effectively down to one breeding pair in the 80s. But management has brought the bird back into a viable population of more than 1,000 at the moment. And this also started the rise of the Mauritian Wildlife Foundation that does a lot of incredible work on the island. Well, for the remaining part of the talk, I'm interested to talk about a couple of natural parks and rewilding programs that are present on the islands currently. And one of them, you see the photos here on Rodrigue Island, that is part of Mauritius, but a smaller island off the coast. And this is the Francois Leguat, the giant tortoise and cave reserve. And these natural parks, they are mostly set up by this biological entrepreneur, Owen Griffiths, here in the blue shirt. And it's an amazing guy that is first and foremost a scientist, a biologist, but he has a great passion as well to set up big projects. And here you see him working with David Burney, a paleobiologist. And with the three of us, we have been in several projects in the last years. And what Owen Griffiths is very interested about is also the impacts of extinction, and also to try to restore these ecosystem processes. And he does that by having several tree nurseries, parks or in Mauritius, and also putting back giant tortoises in restricted areas. And the impacts of that are amazing. Is that the shrub layer is indeed completely disappeared. Exotic species are eaten away by these giant tortoises, and you see the natural forest coming back. So David Burney and I, we are very interested in integral paleoecology. We search for sites with a very rich deposition of fossils, and that can be found, for example, in lava tunnels and caves. And here you see in the photos below a dodo bone, completely surrounded by seeds of endemic trees. And it is these kind of ideas where animals are actually buried within their ecosystem. So if we can understand more about their behavior in the world that they were living in. Well, in the last slides, I will show you is a discovery that Owen Griffiths, David Burney, and I made a few years ago. And this was a site in the lowlands of Mauritius, where we've discovered thousands and thousands of bones of extinct animals. And I will invite anyone who can suggest what I'm holding in my hand here. Maybe you can put it in the chat box. But we also found some archaeological remains. And it was quite difficult to set up a proper excavation, as you can see here, digging with Owen Griffiths digging with his hands. Like we wanted to set up a proper excavation for this site, and that was quite a collaborative effort, where a lot of agencies were involved with very different interests. And if there is 2 minutes left, I can tell you something about it. The area that we were working in was owned by a sugarcane company, Constance Lagaete. And also a local village was very interested in these wetlands that we discovered, because for them these freshwater ecosystems were very important and they wanted to build a temple. But the landowner itself doesn't want too much attention and prefers to keep it locked up and covered with rocks. Anyway, as scientists, we see the potential of such a site of 15,000 years of history with animals living in their environment. So we attracted a lot of a team of international scientists and local scientists of the University of Mauritius. And we had 2 years ago, almost 2 years ago, our first excavation. And yeah, so we cannot say too much yet, but we're hoping in the next year to have some amazing publications from this, and from this team of researchers. And as a last bit, I want to focus as well on for me, it always feels quite of a privilege to arrive to these islands, take my material, go back to the university in Europe, and do the science. But for me, it's also important to involve the local students, as because for me it's important to spark the idea for biodiversity conservation for these students, and I would like to show them what we're doing, and in the end, they will be the next generation conservationists. And the feedback that we've gotten through all these different field excursions that we have here is amazing. I mean, they are the feedback that we get and the questions that they ask is amazing. And I think there is now really an increase in Mauritius young scientists that are really concerned and involved in preserving their cultural and especially their natural heritage. So that is a very encouraging thought. And with that, I would like to give it to the floor. Chat. Thanks for your attention.
Thanks so much, Erik. Amazing. So feel free to show your appreciation with emoji or in the chat box, and we will go straight over to James now. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, good afternoon. Glad we've got a lot of people joining us from across the world. Today I'll be talking to you about coexisting with nature and developing integrated solutions. So some of the processes and topics that Erik picked up on, you will be able, in my presentation, you'll kind of see how these actually come into real practice. And Erik's kind of given us a nice ground to actually understand how we move forward, as you saw him talk about the future sparks of conservation. But before I move on, I just wanted to launch a poll with the audience and ask you the question, what does a landscape mean to you? So I'm just going to share the poll with you now, and if you can respond, that'd be brilliant. Then we can talk about some of our answers and just see how, see what we have. Okay, wow, quite varied. Okay, so that's 25 people responded so far. I'll just give it another 30 seconds. Okay, so it's looking like the most common answer was an area which represents its people, products, and territory. There's not really a wrong answer in here at all, but it's just, I thought it was important to present this question because it just shows how dynamic a landscape is, and it means something in all different cultures from where you're from, and there's not really actually one definition for it. So I think this was just important to I'm just going to share the results. There you are. So if I move on to my next slide. Sorry, I'm just having trouble moving slides. Yeah. Okay, yeah, so on to my first slide. So this is me in Romania. This was a few years ago. I was working on an agricultural innovation project in a rural area in Breza in Empt County. I'm not sure if anyone's traveled to Romania, but it's a beautiful area where I was, very quiet, lots of nature and lovely people. But the project didn't actually encompass rewilding. But why I brought it to you is we developed multi-stakeholder partnerships and processes, which are also vital in rewilding, because when you're rewilding, you're not just working with nature, you're working with people and the landscape and a lot of other stakeholders within that. So this was the case there. It was kind of set back in time, as you can see by the horse cart. This was quite a common form of transport, which was yeah, a step back in the past. But so that was in Romania. So on to my first slide. So we all own a stake of our landscape. I think this is really important that we recognise this in how we begin to create these integrated solutions. And I've shown you a picture of this quilt, a patchwork quilt, and I think that really represents what a landscape is. You know, you've got different colours, you've got different patterns and different weaves. You know, you've got all different types of how to say, let's say, just say colours in this moment, but this can represent the people and the needs and the users and the demands of the landscape as well. So you have ecological standpoints, you have the biological standpoints, socio-cultural, socio-economic, and systems and government. So when we look at a landscape, it's just important to see that it's not just one thing. It might seem that when we're visiting a nice local natural site, but actually it's built upon all these types of values. It's how the place connects with the territory and the people, and how is this represented? You know, you see this in products and things like that. So I think this is a first important point. So the landscape approach, this is a way of integrating some of these collaborative ideas and objectives into an approach which works for nature and for people. In a landscape approach, you still have your domains like economic objectives, environmental and social cultural, but they're actually built into each other, and they're working in synergy rather than individually. So a good example is this would be land use, and let's say local farmers. Their primary objective is an economic objective from their land. You know, their produce, what they're farming. But you have agricultural research institutes who are interested in land and interested to find out better ways to utilize it and work with the farmers. So although their direct needs are slightly different, they can still work in turn with each other for a shared objective. And this is really great for strengthening overarching policies like health, land, and agriculture policies. So to create one of these environments of an integrated landscape approach, we can use multi-stakeholder partnerships. And these are commonly used for dealing with sustainable development challenges. You generally have three focus areas of this, and they're problem-focused, conflict-focused, and opportunity-focused. What multi-stakeholder partnership is basically building a relationship with stakeholders in your landscape or in your local environment to deal with some of these issues that you might confront with each other or individually. Within an MSP, you can develop process stages. Connection, this is all about understanding and being aware of who's around you and then engaging with people in your landscape. You have shared language, which is talking about common issues or common issues, values and skills, and just kind of blending together with each other. The divergent stage is about thinking about these issues or opportunities and merging them together and see if there's if there's a common ground within that. In the co-creation phase, this is a stage where you're actually starting to think about new solutions and new ideas of how you can work together. So this is putting your skills together and how you think you can move forward collectively. Convergence, this is where you're actually putting down your ideas onto paper and developing a collective solution. And then commitment's all about, okay, so which roles are people, how are we going to delegate the roles, how are we going to actually make this process happen of what affects us or our landscape. So within these process stages, we have the how. So how do these processes look like? So facilitation workshops are really great for this, because this kind of carries the relationship through. You can set up lots of tools and activities, and it's quite an impersonal way of getting to know each other and starting to build this relationship without really being too personal for people to feel uncomfortable. You know, it's creative and it's welcoming and it's inclusive and engaging. So these are kind of the tools. I've just listed 2: Thinking Hats and World Cafe, just to give you an idea of it. But this is how that process looks like. So bringing this back to rewilding as part of an integrated landscape approach, I've selected the Danube Delta in Ukraine as a case for this, because it really encompasses a lot of these topics and benefits which these integrated solutions support. The Danube Delta in Ukraine has over 5,000 bird and animal species, and to be able to recover these species, workshops have been set up in place, and that's aimed to that's worked with the local communities and also ecotourism opportunities. So it's connecting nature with people, but not in a separate approach, in a way that it actually blends together, so that through the return of nature, people can become engaged in this and actually start to devise, let's say, ecotourism opportunities. And from this, going back to the first few slides, talked about awareness, recognition and ownership. And from this return of the species and setting up these workshops, people can become more integrated and more active in their own landscapes, which is going to help preserve it for the future to deal with the upcoming challenges. And also, yeah, it's a mutual benefit for wildlife, land and its people. If you see in this image here, this is with the wetland reflooded, but each of these numbers used to be dams which were put in place. And now these are all small waterways which are really helping to recover the wildlife. So just some points to take away from the short presentation. The awareness, the recognition and the ownership. I think this is a really pivotal point in how we're going to step forward in our own rewilding and conservation efforts, because without this, it's really, you know, ownership is really a cornerstone of longevity of the projects we want to, or what we're trying to achieve. And by doing this, this means carrying out multi-stakeholder partnerships. So translating our values into real practice. And how we're going to do this, how can we be creative in this new kind of time we're facing of dealing with these issues. And that's in order to develop these kind of integrated solutions, to develop the wildlife economy, but also to make sure humans and nature are not seen as individual and singular entities. They're actually, well, we live in nature, it's just it's not always perceived as that. So it's really important that we develop these kind of circular solutions to our future problems. So a question that I wanted to leave the audience with today, and feel free to write it in the chat box, is how will you decide to connect to your landscape? So whatever ideas you have, please put them in the chat and we can share and talk about them. It'd be really interesting. So that was my last slide, and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much, James, for that fantastic presentation. Again, everyone feel free to show your appreciation with a little emoji or question in the chat box. And now we hand it over to Purnima, who is going to inspire us all with the stories of her conservation army. Purnima, it's over to you.
Thank you so much, Jessica. So my screen is visible, right? Okay. Am I audible?
Yeah, we can hear you loud and clear and we can see you.
Okay, that's fine. So yeah, I was fascinated by the talk from James and Erik, and And yeah, thank you so much everyone for joining me, and thank you so much to the team for giving me this opportunity to connect with everyone, to share my views on rewilding and share my stories from Assam. Yeah, and I can see people from all over the world are joining here, and I can also see some people from my place, Assam, and from India. It is so inspiring, everyone. So thank you and namaskar to everyone. So today, yeah, at first I would like to mention something about rewilding, and yeah, so for me, rewilding is not only species or animals. For me, rewilding means something about people and people, just communities. So we have to bring communities to the forefront as leaders to save wildlife, to save biodiversity. And the definition of rewilding means to me that. And if you have any views regarding community conservation, people's movement, participations of stakeholders, yeah, please keep sharing. And whenever I'll move my slides and share my journey, I would be very honored if you keep sharing your views. So today I'd like to share our work in Assam, and it's a huge teamwork. We all are working with team in team with our communities. So, and we are working for a bird called greater adjutant stork, and locally this bird is called as Hargila. Hargila means it's a combination of two words. Yeah, and it is called. It means bone swallowers, and people treat this bird as bad omen or disease-carrying pest. Yeah, so I want to share a bit about a story which happened 12 years ago. Actually, at that moment, I didn't know anything about conservation, anything about rewilding. I didn't know anything. I was very desperate. I was a very desperate student to do my PhD. I was very passionate to do my PhD on this bird, Hargila bird. And if you see, this is a baby Hargila bird. Can you assume, can you imagine, it's a baby Hargila bird, but you can think it as like an adult. And yeah, so when I landed in a village for the first time in my life for collecting data, I had an encounter with a person who was cutting down his own tree, which was a huge Anticephalus kadam tree. We call it as kadam tree, Anticephalus kadamba. And this tree was hosting 9 nests with nine baby birds. And all the person very ruthlessly cut down the tree, and the baby birds fell down. And when I was there, I was shocked. I was so embarrassed, and I dared to speak to the person why he was doing so. And I was again shocked. He was very angry on me, and his neighbors joined. They surrounded, they clapped at me, whistling at me. I was so nervous. And then the tree owner, he told that, would you like to join us from tomorrow as our housemaid and clean the debris? I have another tree, I have another tree. So this bird is a bad omen, you don't know, and you are expecting me to save this bird in my backyard. Why don't you take this bird to your backyard? Something like that. And I was shocked again, because some people again started telling that, oh, this lady actually, she came here to eat the flesh of Hargila bird. That day, actually, when I helped a few birds for rescue and to the Assam State Zoo. And that day, when I was coming back on the way to my home, many things kept coming to my mind, and basically, what is the value of my PhD, my education? I couldn't even motivate a few people towards the birds and towards the trees, and what's going on. And that day, I think I got a purpose to live my life, and I realized that research would not be enough. So we have to bring the birds into the hearts and minds of the people. We have to bring the species into hearts and minds of the people. And from that day, our people's movement in Assam started, and it's a continuous movement till the end of my life, I think. So today I'd like to now share my journey, how we are working in Assam with our team. So yeah, Hargila bird, so greater adjutant stork is an endangered bird and technically more endangered than rhinos, tigers and elephants. And when we talk about wildlife in India, we talk about mega species always. And in this journey, in this way, we always, always these lesser known species are neglected. So I have started a movement to request all our young generation to come forward and to work on our lesser known species. And I always request them that Hargila can be a representative, and please work with communities, and we can work together. So yeah, habitat loss, poaching, poisoning are the major threats, and the most important thing is that this bird not breeds in the not in the protected area. So this way they don't they don't get government protection. So they come and select the trees to breed to build their nests or for breeding in the private lands in the villages, and traditionally they keep coming. And the bird is treated as bad omen or a disease-carrying pest. Once the bird select a tree, people just cut down the tree to get rid of the bird. That is the biggest conflict. So yeah, so I have already mentioned, and so only willingness and support of communities, tree owners can save this bird from extinction. And that is why we are very closely working with people and many stakeholders. So at first we did a survey why they cut down the tree, why they don't like, and one of the reason is also because many baby birds fall down and die if not attended, and even if attended they die, and these got rotten and no one attended. So this was a big conflict, and they treated this bird as a very unhygienic and a headache for them. So there were many reasons like income and many reasons to cut down the trees. And then we started a PR, we developed a PR plan in Assam to reach the hearts and minds of the people and to expand the stakeholders, to identify the stakeholders, and then we started our work. So first of all, which I realized that motivating communities, motivating the tree owners, so important. And more than that, consistency is so important. So once we start our work, we can't stop. The consistency which I learned from the Hargila bird when I studied them, and making friendship with them, understanding their concern, felicitating them. And this way we started our journey. And then actually in our journey, nothing was actually bookish. Everything we did was actually that we learned from our communities, from their cultures. And it was a side effect of our work that we gave birth to a group called Hargila Army. It's an all-women army team. And I'm so proud and honored to mention that in Hargila Army now we have 10,000 women, over 10,000 women. All are rural women converted into conservationists. So they are Hargila Army. They have a platform to work, and I think it is incredible. I'm so proud of them. And our work is an integration of science, protection, awareness, empowerment, and tradition and culture. So I'm going to that. So earlier, what I realized, I mentioned these slides because maybe if some new generation students or someone wants to work for communities, maybe they can replicate some idea by adding some of their idea to that. Yeah, so earlier our women communities, they didn't come to the meetings. They often, whenever I organize a meeting, I always saw male members. Then I started visiting them, and one of the reasons of our women that they have to nurture their families and cook all the time. Then I started with a different idea, cooking festivals, and it was one of the biggest hit. So we started cooking festivals everywhere, in every colony, and our women started coming like anything. And I am a very passionate environmental educator. So then I started playing Web of Life with them, making them understanding that each species is so important, like this Web of Life. And they started giving their voice, and we befriended with each other. And one of the biggest event, which is very close to my heart, I would like to invite you. I'm sure you would come and join one day, which we do in Assam, is Hargila baby shower. And in Assamese, we call it as Hargila Panchamrit, Hargila baby shower. And yeah, we celebrate this Hargila baby shower exactly like the way we celebrate for our Assamese expecting mothers. Like we treat Hargila as our own family members, and our women became so emotionally sensitized, you know. Yeah, earlier actually when the birds came for breeding, laying eggs, I myself saw that many trees were being either cut down or many people smoked under the nest. So now when our women started coming, joining Hargila baby shower and giving him, now they are a part of that, and we are celebrating it with our womenhood, I think so. And it was really working. And Hargila baby shower now every year is one of the biggest event. We celebrate it on the end of October or November, and basically before hatching. Yeah, and this is also another event actually. Like the idea is to bring the birds as a holy bird, as people treated them as bad omen or disease carrying pests. So we always try to do something opposite. So this is like it is called Gita Bhagavat celebration, Gita Bhagavat procession, like holy book Bible. So our people keep our holy book Gita Bhagavat, and they move from one place to another and to bring peace. And then we celebrate Hargila, Hargila awareness. We merge it into our Gita Bhagavat procession, and this way actually the birds starting hitting people's mind, hearts, and just the bird became visible. And we have a program called Communities Teaching Communities. We train our women or youths, and then they train others, and then they keep awareing other people. And our women this way feel so proud to be educator. And yeah, I think they build lots of ownership this way, and building ownership is so important. And we do lots of pride campaigns. If anyone here wants to do such pride campaigns, and if I can assist, I would be very honored for that. And our work, I'm very proud to mention that our work is not only saving the bird, but also empowering women, and more than that, social changes in the villages. So yeah, maybe after this, if we have a workshop or something like that, we would like to discuss in details. So yeah, so you can see now this is our Assamese gamusa. So we train our women. We give them diploma in fashion technology and all, and our women weave our Hargila into our traditional Assamese gamusa, which is so respectful. Our Assamese people should have this gamusa in bulk because we need it to celebrate. This is our heart actually. So this gamusa, and so this gamusa now merged with Hargila motif, and you can see the transformation. So this way actually our women are not only selling their products at a good price and getting income, but also they are celebrating, they are sharing the beauty of the bird, I think. And in pandemic time, we could produce more than 11,000 face masks and support our communities. I'm mentioning here because this way actually we have supported our communities and to the bird and also to the pandemic situation. And in this pandemic time only, we became so creative that now our products are globally available through this website. And yeah, this is, I think, a sustainable idea how our women are getting income. So yeah, and many tourists also keep visiting. Like, for example, we have a conservation outlet every day, and many tourists keep visiting. So yeah, this way our women feel very proud and touched. So we always avoid cash, and instead of that, we always give rewards, scholarships, and we want to be very transparent because sometimes if we give direct cash and after 1 year or 2 years, if we stop the project somehow, then it would not be sustainable. So always we try for reward. And we also partnered with our local schools, try to emerge many future leaders in conservation, many innovative ideas, craft Hargila classes, touch and feel factor. Like in assembly also, we request the schools to have a Hargila assembly, joining their normal assembly. So that we can reach our parents to these children also, and at the same time they are motivated. And this is these pictures actually represent some programs from garbage dump, and I often visit these rat picker children, and this picture I'm sharing because I always learn from them how to keep smiling in scarcity. So we have a Hargila Learning and Conservation Center now, and I'm very proud that our Deputy Commissioner from Kamrup district, he himself and many people have recognized it as India's first Hargila Learning Center. And very recently we inaugurated it, but now it is closed. But yeah, it is small, but our dream is very big. If you want to support our Hargila Learning Center by any ideas and primary education games, you are very welcome. So this is a glimpse of our Hargila Learning Center, and yeah, we work closely with police and district administrations, and our communities are very proud of that. And our work is also, one part of our work is also a major part, basically rescue and rehabilitation. We rescue, you can see the nets, we have to put nets under the nesting tree, the baby birds fall down, and then we hand raise them and then release them in the wild. You can see one of the injured bird here, and in this pandemic time it was very very challenging, but we made it. We could successfully release 46, and now I am almost on the end of my presentation. I think if you so you can see on the left side, you can see my Hargila learning tower platform, which is 100 feet and 85 feet and 75. I have 3 Hargila learning platforms, and I climb there, and you can see, and I stay there and camouflage myself and study the breeding behavior of the bird. But now on the other side, you might have a questions. What are the birds doing on the bamboo platform? Yes, these are the nest platforms. We did an experiment in 2017, and I'm very proud to mention it is so inspiring that from 2018 we were successful, and this was the first experiment in the world, and this way we raised 5 baby birds, and which are, I think, a contribution to the world population. So this picture I'm sharing because it inspires me a lot in our nest platform. And if you have any questions, we can discuss it later about our nest platforms. So finally, I'm very proud to mention that the villages where we're specially working now became globally recognized as the largest, and now these villages are the largest breeding colony in the world, and nest numbers increased by 10-folds. And I think I'll discuss it later about the population. I just want to mention that population increased by double, and in that 12 years of time, and the nest numbers increased by 10-folds. So when we talk about conservation or biodiversity conservation, I always mention that it is not a rocket science. It is about, it is not a rocket science. It is about educating people, educating communities, and nurturing our young minds. And now I always want to share this picture because these trees inspire me a lot. These trees are the habitat of the Hargila bird, which is the most beautiful bird in the world. And before we worked on Hargila, many people didn't know about Hargila birds. So this is a message for everyone that we have to explore a lot. Maybe these kind of trees in the unprotected area, in the urban area, or maybe in the rural area, maybe they are hosting many other endangered species, threatened species. So I request all our young generation who are attending here, or everyone here, to please try to explore, and sky is the limit. And I am available in, if you want to follow my work, I am available as Stork Sister in social media. So thank you so much for your kind listening, which means a lot for me. And thanks a lot to all my donors, collaborators, mentors, and villagers, my Hargila army, and everyone.